Welcome into Jungle Tales, a Pirate Baseball podcast. This week in East Carolina baseball, as we're taking a look back at the Pirates' 3-1 week sweep over the Memphis Tigers to open play in the American, following a 9-4 midweek loss to UNCW down at Segra Stadium in Fayetteville. But before we dive into the week that was, right now I'd like to welcome in former East Carolina pitcher John White. John, we appreciate your time as always.
I appreciate you having me on, Bubba. It was started off a slow week, and then it ended with a bang with a home run off the fair pole to end the game in 7. So we ended with a bang, and we'll discuss all the games, and I look forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. 9-4. The Pirates lost against UNCW at Segra Stadium, and then very quickly the scores from over the weekend, and then we'll go through each game individually: 3-2, 3-1, and then 11-1 in 7 innings, as you mentioned today. With the walk off, if you will, by Davin Whitaker, a 2-run shot there in the bottom of the 7th. But starting off with that game against the Seahawks, traveling midweek series. And this was something that was attempted a few years ago. Unfortunately, the game in Kinston got rained out, and you only got 2 games in. But on Tuesday night, not surprisingly, Nick Moran got the ball, and quite frankly, and he and the other Pirate pitchers there in the first 3 or 4 innings just could not throw strikes in the game. The Seahawks had 15 hits, and the big issue. ECU issued 10 free passes. The majority of those, like I said, coming in the first 4 innings.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a rough start. Nick did not pitch as well as we've seen him. He had a couple base on balls, and then we brought in a couple of the youngsters, and Jackson had some issues with the walk. So I think there were 6 walks in the first 3 2/3. And after, going up, I think it was 3-1. They scored first, and then we came back in the second, scored 3 runs. The pitching wasn't getting it done there early on. So a couple guys had to come in later and kind of settle things down. But, yeah, definitely the name of this game was not getting the ball over the plate and giving up runs and freebies that they're being called. But, yeah, not a good start.
Yeah, you heard Cliff Godwin in the post game, his frustration. He said that the team, on Monday had one of their better practices ever in the spring. Not just this team, but he acted as though any team that he had in his 11 years that was one of the better practices. So it was extremely frustrating to him to come out and perform the way we did on Tuesday night in that 9-4 loss to UNCW. And he referenced, he just said, I guess it was Nick Moran, we called a fastball away to a left-handed batter, lefty on lefty matchup, and he hit the guy. That was just the type of night it was.
Yeah, and I think we had a couple walks with the bases loaded, and then you keep putting runners on base, and you start having to go up against guys like Thatch. They're one of the best players in their conference, if not their overall highest rated player. He's gonna do something eventually, and they've got runners on in front of him. Coach has harped on, the home run with no one on doesn't hurt us, but if you're putting people on base, you're going to get hurt eventually by great hitters.
Jake Hunter and Brad Pruitt pitched well in the last 4 to 5 innings in the game, and it gave ECU a chance, but the bats just could not get anything going.
Yeah, I think they came in, and Jake had 3 innings, struck out 4, gave up a run, and then Brad pitched 2 solid innings there at the end. Yeah, holding him in. When you come in late in the game as a pitcher, you're down. You're trying to keep your team in it, see if you can scratch together some runs. I think we got 1 run, but had a couple chances, but really didn't have enough to be able to overcome the 9-3 lead at the time, and I think it ended 9-4.
You're correct. 9-4 final, and with that, we'll move on to the weekend. The Memphis Tigers came to town East Carolina opening conference play, of course, and on Friday night, it was your stereotypical Friday night game as far as low scoring and not a whole lot of offense.
Yeah, and you have Ethan on the mound, and you're going to get a lot of strikes. Uh, Memphis came into this series as the best ERA in the conference, so you have Ethan going. You're not going to give up a lot of runs typically, and they did get a couple solo home runs. Didn't really hurt anybody, and then ECU was able to scratch a few runs and then held on late in the game with some good pitching in relief of Ethan by Ethan Young. So the two Ethans once again do it again on Friday. It's a good 1-2 combo, and uh, it's going to be a pretty tough test for any team to come in and try to beat these two on Friday night. So I like what I'm seeing there. They 10 strikeouts. Um, Base on balls, I think actually Ethan was the only one that gave up any base on balls. So that's a good sign for both of those guys. They got a little mojo going on together, and I think that's a very positive thing. And it's also a good start to every weekend to have those two pitchers being able to get you going for the weekend.
And one of the things that I love that we did and throughout the series is when Memphis scored, and they didn't score much, but when they did, we responded for the most part. We did take that 1-0 lead there in the first inning on Friday, and then they responded with a couple of solo shots to take that 2-1 lead. But ECU responds with a 2-run bottom of the fourth, and that's where things finished up at 3-2. You had Ethan Norby, his final line, and he won his third consecutive start, 5 1/3, 2 runs, both of which were earned on 4 hits, 5 strikeouts, 2 walks, 89 pitches to record those 16 outs. And Norby is now 3-2 after a couple of tough luck losses. And Ethan Young notched his second save, an extended save, if you will, as he worked 3 2/3, as John mentioned. Shutout baseball, 2 hits, 5 strikeouts, no free passes. And in the game, ECU 10 Ks, 2 free passes. And on the weekend, John, after issuing 10 free passes on Tuesday night against the Seahawks, um, don't want to jump ahead too far here, but just looking at the big picture, the Pirates, 22 Ks and 8 free passes.
Yeah, that was a big turnaround. And Ethan Young got what I call the Goose Gossage type save. Pitcher can dominate a game, come in 2 or 3 innings at the end of the game. We don't see that much in baseball anymore, but that used to be the way it was played. You had a great reliever that would come in and get you 2 or 3 innings and finish the game. And in this game, hitting wise, Colby Wallace and Braxton Tramel were 4 of the 6 hits. So they continued the hot hitting between both of those guys. So,
Yeah,
well, for Colby, it's continued, but for Braxton, it's just starting. It seems like, but yeah, he was on the ball this weekend too.
yeah, Colby, as you mentioned, has been swinging a hot bat, just shy of 300. I think 286 now to be exact. Looking at the numbers here, um, tied for the team lead with 6 bombs after not hitting one a season ago, and also tied for the team lead with 5 doubles. Has driven in 23, which tops the Pirates.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the hotter hitters. They got him, I think, in the 3 spot. It's a good spot. Those first 3 batters, you can't ask for anything more than they're doing. Braden's getting on base at a good clip. Dixon's doing what he does. He didn't quite have a great game that first one, but uh, they seem to be swinging really hot at the top of the lineup, and Colby's capitalizing with some RBIs and getting his hits. And then we got Braxton kind of coming into the mix and looking like he may be an answer there in the middle of the lineup. I know coaches trying to figure some things out, play with the lineup a little bit, which is understandable. But it's starting to form itself, and it's starting to look like you got a formidable top 6, 7 hitters there that he's kind of settled in on. And then down at the bottom of the lineup, he's settling in on those guys that can also get on base as well. So.
Yeah, and Braxton Tramel, he's someone that we heard about throughout the fall, and that he was going to be one like Austin Irby, that was very capable of contributing significantly as a freshman. Had his struggles early after an opening day start, but has since kind of recommitted himself, as Coach Godwin mentioned in the post game. I believe it was after Saturday's game, just talking about just the way he had kind of gone back to his processes that he had fared so well with in the fall, and to slow the game down. And we saw it. 3 consecutive 2-hit games for Braxton Tramel this weekend, and just did a heck of a job. And kind of transitioning into Saturday's game, it was fairly similar to Friday night in that it was a low scoring pitchers type of matchup.
Yeah, and the wind was kind of swirling. We really didn't know what was going on in that game. Sometimes it was blowing out. Sometimes it was just dead. There was one ball that I saw hit that off the bat, I thought it was gone. I even heard Mully say that ball is out of here right even before we could tell what was going on. But if you look at the flag at that time on replay, it was just dead, and the ball just kind of settled down. So there was some swirling. At first, I thought the 20-mile-an-hour winds were going to cause a lot of runs, but it ended up not being that way. And we did have a lower scoring game again. Once again, Memphis showed why they had the lowest ERA in the conference coming in, and we ended up winning a 3-1 game, and Brad Pruitt got the win in that game, and Jake Hunter got the save.
And David Case got the start for Memphis and suffered the loss. 5 innings and 2 runs on 3 hits. He did issue, I think, at least 4 free passes because he had 4 walks, and he did strike out 7, throwing 100 pitches in those 5 frames. And then Seth Cox did a solid job out of the Tigers' pen, keeping the Tigers right there with a chance to pull it out late. But
I was going to say about
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say about David Case, kind of a sneaky pitcher there. The way he threw, it wasn't like he was coming in with dominant stuff, but he knew how to pitch, and he kind of was sneaking around the plate, and it was pretty effective. So it held East Carolina bats down. He had 7 strikeouts, and he did issue a lot of walks. We didn't capitalize like we could have. Lance Williams threw 2 1/3. He had 4 Ks, 2 base on balls, and then as we mentioned before, Brad came in, started to hold things down, pitched very well, a good solid 4 2/3, 63 pitches, got the win, and then the veteran out of the bullpen, Jake, came in and held it down to the end of the game. So nice, solid, kind of a scary little ending, but they did hold off, and great pitching, both sides, and it was a low-scoring game.
Yeah, we talked about the changeup from an offensive standpoint, and with Braxton Tramel being in the lineup, getting the start in left field, and a lot of speculation would Sean Jenkins remain in the weekend rotation, and of course that answer was no. Lance Williams got the start in that number 2 role, and his final line, and like you mentioned, 2 1/3 and of shutout baseball, 2 hits, and had those 4 strikeouts. But then Brad Pruitt, in relief, he notched his first win as a Pirate, and with that, combined with some solid work in Tuesday night's game against UNCW, Brad Pruitt is our PGXGloves.com Pitcher of the Week. as I mentioned, 2 appearances, 6 2/3, did not allow a run, 5 hits. 4 of those came in his 2 innings of work against UNC Wilmington, despite not allowing a run. So in 4 2/3 against Memphis, surrendered just a single hit, 3 strikeouts, and a heck of a week for the Oklahoma transfer.
Yeah, and he has a lot of confidence in that slider that he throws. But if he can limit the walks with his type of stuff, he's very difficult to hit, as we already know. He just needs to make sure that the walk situation doesn't get out of hand. But he's got good enough stuff where he can let some things slide. But that slider of his, when it's working, coupled with a good fastball as well, he is a very tough pitcher to hit.
One of the things the media asked him about, as well as Cliff Godwin in the post game on Saturday evening, was just that his slider, has been his bread and butter largely. Has had issues at times commanding the fastball and changeup, which have been real points of emphasis with AK, East Carolina pitching coach Austin Knight, and we certainly saw a lot of improvement, which allowed him to be so effective against Memphis on Saturday afternoon. And you talked about Jake Hunter and what he did, throwing 2 innings and needing 32 pitches to record those 6 outs. On the offensive side, we talked about Braxton Tramel, how he had a 2-hit game on Friday, a pair of singles. You had him hit the 2-run wind-aided and glove-aided home run early in the game when it went off the right fielder um, into the jungle, and that was a 2-0 lead, and that would hold up until the 7th inning when the Pirates were able to tack on a run, RBI single, back through the box by Dixon Williams.
Yeah, the offense, there was a little bit of shakeup in the 4th hole. He brought up Alex Boucher to see if, I talked about messing with the lineup a little bit, see if he can find something. So Braden Burris continues to get on base. It seems like his on base percentage keeps going up. I know his batting average now is around 400, right at 400. But yeah, the middle lineup, there's been a little bit of, from the 5, 6, 7 hole, not as quite as much production. But like I said earlier, those top guys continue to pour it on. And then we had Braxton Tramel move to left field. Unfortunately, you have a guy like Braden Burris, an athlete who probably can play any position on the field, moved to right field, played a great right field as well. But Braxton came through and earned his way up the lineup into the Sunday spot where he ended up batting 4th. So that was good. And then Peltier doing some damage at the bottom of the lineup too. Always good to see. Need him to kind of get back in order. Good hitter. So it's a good thing to have a hitter like Peltier down at the bottom, leading off before Burris. So that was good to see.
Yep, definitely like a second leadoff man with Alex Peltier there in that 9 hole. And Braden Burris was the only other Pirate with a multi-hit game, as the Pirates finished with 6 hits on Saturday, as they did on Friday evening against what has been a solid Memphis pitching staff through the first 35 to 40% of the season. Any other notes that you had about Game 2 before we go ahead and move on to today's series finale?
No, I'm good with that. We can move on to the finale.
Okay, in Game 3, you and I discussed this yesterday. Who would get the ball? Because Coach Godwin said in the post game that Sean Jenkins would be coming out of the bullpen, if he pitched, and so ended up being Jackson DiLorenzo. D'Lo got the start, worked a solid first inning. Had to pitch through some adversity. As it was a very atypical play. I think the first error of his Pirate career for Alex Peltier, as he dropped one in center field, and it, they bunted him over to third. So you had a runner 90 feet away with less than two, and D'Lo was able to get out of it.
Yeah, and he's been struggling with some walks. So it always seems like the worst thing possible when you're trying to get back on track is to have something like that happen. And it was just a careless drop. They did review it, but it was obvious that he never had the ball. So that was unfortunate, but he kind of settled back down and got out of the inning. The high strike zone was not being called today like it was yesterday. So that umpire, he might have called one the whole game, but he was not giving up the higher strike zone. So pitchers had to change over from what they saw yesterday. But he did a good job of getting out of that. And I was surprised he didn't go back out there. I'm not sure what happened there. I know they talked about was there some kind of injury or anything, but I'm not sure that was the case. But then Jenkins was able to come back in the second inning. It was almost like he started, so it was just an easy transition for him to come in and pitch a good amount today. I mean, I think he finished the game out.
Yeah, I definitely don't believe there's anything of that sort with D'Lo. I think it's just strictly coach's decision. Did not hear anything like that mentioned in the post game, but in the bottom of the first, Memphis started their center fielder because they had some sickness running through their team, kind of like East Carolina did within the last couple weeks. When we traveled up to VCU, so
You talking about
again,
you talking about James Smith?
yep, James Smith, the Tigers center fielder, got the ball, and he this was his third appearance, first start. He had only logged about, I don't know, 3 1/3, 3 2/3 in those two outings, and he had struggled to find the zone, and that was once again the case today. He hit Dixon Williams, hit Colby Wallace there in the bottom of the first, and then Austin Irby came up with a clutch 2-run double with 2 outs.
Yeah, he has great stuff. He just doesn't have control of it a lot of times, but he does have a good slider, does have a good, fastball, 94, 95 miles an hour. He just needs to work on being able to find the strike zone. They have two players that are two-way or can go two-way, and he pitched because of the sickness, as you mentioned. But yeah, the home run, not the home run, but the double by Irby that cleared bases for the 2 runs. That was a beautiful swing, gap hit. I like seeing us get more doubles and gappers like that. And that was just he hit the ball exactly where it was pitched. He took it opposite field between left and center, and the runners were able to score from first. So good start to the game against what is a type of pitcher where you really can't get comfortable in the box. And if you saw the first batter he hit was off the kneecap. It almost seemed like, I know it wasn't, but that looked painful. Uh, and then he hit another batter inside on an inside pitch. So I started to wonder if they were going to go with him very much longer. They stuck with him a couple innings, I guess. And like I said, he does have good stuff. He just is not in control of it yet.
Right, and before he hit Colby Wallace, he actually he threw one like Mully said on the broadcast. It was about a 9 foot high,
Yeah,
95 mile an hour fastball.
yeah. And Mully says, to be able to hit someone on purpose, you got to have good control. Well, that was pretty obvious that he just lost control of the ball. But it is kind of unsettling when you have a guy throwing pretty decent speed. He can get it up to 95 miles an hour, and you just saw one of your teammates take one off of the leg, and uh, the ball bounded, 15 feet in the air off his leg. So it was not something that I would like to happen. But the Pirates take pride on not really are taking their hit batsmen. They don't move a lot. I mean, they take their pitches inside with the best of them. They're not going to budge. And in this case, he probably felt like he should have. But anyway, yeah, it's a little bit of a wild streak going on there that made me wonder how much longer he was going to be held in the game.
And we talked about the situation with Sean Jenkins, who had been the Pirates' number 2 starter throughout the season, and experienced some struggles in those last couple outings. And with that being the case, Cliff Godwin, Austin Knight, and staff opted to move him into a relief role. And he came into the game there in the second inning, and he went the rest of the way. Sean is now 2-1, and in those 6 innings, surrendered just 1 run. It was earned on 2 hits, struck out 4, walked 3, needed 84 pitches to go through those 6 frames. John, what did you see, from Sean today?
Well, he got back to throwing his fastball a little more. He did drop it down in miles per hour to get it over the plate a few times. He's got good run on that fastball, which is a good sign. He still likes to throw those off-speed pitches, which he has good ones, but there were some that were a little bit out of control early on. He started to rein that in later. One thing he's still a little bit is the game situation when you have a big lead. He's got the 8th and 9th hitter down there hitting. One's batting below the Mendoza line. The other one wasn't even batting 100, and he could have went right at him with a bigger lead, in my opinion. So he'll learn that. But it seemed like he was using that occasion to try to work on controlling his off-speed pitches a little better. I know that's been a struggle for him, but he definitely tried to get his fastball more involved. I did notice that. And with the defense, he did get a couple errors there, but with the defense they have, it should be. And with a lead like that, you should go right after those guys down at the bottom of the lineup, especially. And this is a good comeback game for him, so he needed that. He's a young man. He said it was mental after the game. He said it was nothing physical. So he had to work on his mental game, and hopefully he's going to be back on track and eventually get back into the starting rotation.
Yeah, he said he and Austin Knight, over the last several days, have watched film from the fall when he was really clicking on all cylinders, and he kind of went through a checklist, with his processes and to get his mindset and approach back to where it needed to be, and you made an excellent point as far as him getting better as the game went along. He did walk 1 in the second and 1 in the third, but in those last 4 frames, just a single walk, and he was able to, like you said, and get that breaking ball across for strikes. Whereas early, it was nowhere close.
Yeah, he definitely got better as the game went on. He actually was touching 93, 94 miles an hour on a few fastballs. I think that'll continue to go up as he can add that more into his arsenal. He's got a lot of pitches. Like, he throw a curveball, but he's got a slider, and he's got that arm side run on his fastball. So the batters have a hard time getting good barrel on a pitch like that. So I wish he would use it more, and it looked like he was doing that today, and he definitely got better as the game went along, and hopefully he can build upon that in the coming weeks.
You're watching Jungle Tales, a Pirate Baseball podcast, and specifically this weekend Pirate Baseball, as former Pirate pitcher John White and I are taking a look back at ECU's 3-1 week. And we appreciate everyone chiming in on YouTube, Facebook, or if you're obviously listening to the archive via Spotify or any of those other platforms. We appreciate you tuning in. But if you're chiming in tonight, let us know your thoughts on the Pirates. Uh, you know, 15-9 start, 3-0 in conference play, not quite to the halfway point of the season. We talked about how Cliff Godwin and the team, they like to break it up into 5 11-game seasons. ECU went 5-6 in those first 11 games, 8-3 in the next 11, which is where you want to be. Obviously, they had some ground to make up, and now they're off to a 2-0 start in that third 11-game season, if you will, of the 5. And of course, you would have an additional game for that 56th game. But breaking down large task into more manageable parts.
Yeah, and in this game on the offensive side, the top of the lineup the first four batters scored 7 runs. They had 7 hits, or excuse me, they had 5 hits, 7 runs, and 6 RBIs. So once again, the top of the lineup is doing their job. Burris was on. Dixon got on. Colby's bringing them in. And then we had Tramel move up to the 4 spot. And Colby and him went back-to-back home runs. And that's a good sign to see those guys clicking like that. But Irby as well, his swing looking nice, like we mentioned earlier on the earlier double. But yeah, it was good to see that they kind of solidified that upper half of the lineup, and it does look like the offensive side puzzle pieces are being fit in to something that the coach is happy with, and may continue to stick with that lineup until further notice.
Yeah, it was great to see the bats, come alive today. And Coach, I'm trying to remember if it was after Friday's game or yesterday's game, but in one of those first 2 games, where ECU just had 6 hits, Cliff said, "Yeah, did we give some bats away? No doubt, but at the same time, to only have 3 runs and 6 hits." And he said that the Pirates had 22 quality at bats, just one off their goal of 23, which was certainly eye opening, and it was something I observed as well. I mean, a lot of times, it's not always going to translate to the production you want in this game, as John. And on Sunday, today, the Pirates were able to put up those 11 runs on 10 hits in 7 innings, and hit 3 home runs in the process, with Colby Wallace, Braxton Tramel, and then Davin Whitaker, that you already referenced off the foul pole that ended things. And Braxton Tramel, a third consecutive 2-hit game. Those first couple games he was in the 8 hole, if I'm not mistaken. Today, hitting cleanup, and that shows you how much Cliff Godwin and Jeff Palumbo and staff liked what they were seeing from the Pirate freshman, who's a high school teammate, of Sean Jenkins. Braxton went 2 for 4 with 3 runs batted in, and then, as a result, Braxton Tramel is our PGXGloves.com Player of the Week, and the Pirate left fielder. Again, 6 for 9, 2 bombs, 5 RBIs. Heck of a week for Braxton, and it shows you exactly what we had been hearing throughout the fall and perhaps early spring.
That's right, well deserved. He had a great week. The home run today was one of those no doubters. The other day was kind of swirling in the wind on the first game on Saturday, I believe. And then the home run by Davin Whitaker. I don't know, for some reason it reminds me of JJC, the swing, the look, the way the ball was hit out. It reminded me of Cowart when he used to swing for some reason. But yeah, he ended the game hitting one off the foul pole, and it kind of came out of nowhere for me because I was expecting to go, and then all of a sudden the game's over as I'm watching, and I was like, oh wow, I didn't even know we were up by 10 runs at that point. So
yeah, it's funny you say that as far as Davin Whitaker reminding you of Jacob Jenkins Cowart, because I had 2 other Pirates message me, when Davin hit the bomb. One said Davin's JJC light. Certainly didn't mean anything derogatory there, just from the standpoint of it being earlier in his career, and him resembling JC as far as his appearance, and being a left-handed bat, mustache, hair, you name it. And
yeah,
then
all the
and
above.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I said all the above. You're right.
Yeah, and then another Pirate, Johnny Gardner, texted me and said, in addition to JC, he also thought a little of Cam Clonch, which I can see, with him being a left-handed bat, of that same mold. And
Yeah,
then also obviously Devin was a right-handed bat, but he mentioned Devin Harris as well from back in the Billy Godwin years, who wrapped up his career in either '09 or 2010.
Yeah, the swing, the way the ball got out, and that swing just reminded me of Cowart for some reason. It was just a quick, kind of medium height line drive that I've seen Cowart hit many a time, and he hit a lot of balls off the wall as well in his career. But it's not just his looks wise, but and he's a left-hander, but just the way the swing was, kind of reminiscent of Cowart in the lineup. So.
Speaking of former Pirates, we appreciate the support of former East Carolina third baseman Mark Minikazi. Kaz, for years now, has run pgxgloves.com. They can provide you with batting gloves, golf gloves, football gloves. You see a couple of the examples there on the screen. You have the purple and gold diamond pattern golf glove on the left, and then the GOAT batting gloves on the right. They also have a very popular clown batting glove and several others. And so check them out. Again, pgxgloves.com. Each and every week of the program, This Week in Pirate Baseball is presented by PGX Gloves. Kind of looking forward now, John. The Pirates 15-9, 3-0, 4 games on the road this week. ECU having won 8 of its last 9, with that loss to UNCW being the exception. You have a trip to Duke. The Blue Devils went to Charlottesville against a struggling but extremely talented UVA club. The Cavs, preseason number 2, and it's hard to believe that you know, Duke went up there, and Duke is certainly extremely talented in their own right. They were preseason number 15, experienced some early season struggles as well, but the Blue Devils seem to be well on their way to figuring it out. As like I said, they went to Charlottesville and won all 3. Taking the games from the Wahoos 9-5. 13-2 and 13-6.
Yeah, surprising. Number 2 team, they're not going to be ranked next week. Everybody knows that. They're already down to 24th. Duke's starting to show that they can play a little bit. They've started slow on the season, but a great ball club. So that's going to be a tough matchup on Tuesday. It's going to be in Durham. Hopefully I can make it out there and visit with you that night. But, yeah, that's a good matchup during the week. Just like last week, UNC Wilmington Club, always your Randy Hood running the show down there. You're always going to have a dogfight. But Duke's same way. Going to be a tough matchup on Tuesday.
Yeah, if you've never been out to Jack Coombs Field, I definitely encourage you to get your tickets in advance. It may not sell out, but it is a small park, and if you've never been to a game there, there's not a ton of seats. I'll say that, and I know they have done some improvements, some renovations, but still a very, very small park. And ECU always has a strong turnout whenever the Pirates and Blue Devils get together.
That's right. I've never sat in the seats there. I have played at that park. But, yes, it's not the biggest of places. So get your tickets and come support the Pirates, and let's keep this thing rolling.
I remember, I guess the first time I ever went to Jack Coombs was back in 1990. When the Pirates were 47-9, one of the program's best seasons in school history, and you had the chance to
Yeah.
watch the Pirates beat the Dukies in that year.
Yep. And I remember that game. We did a piecemeal game, and I happened to be awarded the win by the scorekeeper. When you have a piecemeal game, I guess they give it to the person they felt did the best job. I just happened to pitch 2 innings out of between JJ, Tim, myself, and happened to get the win handed to me. But I was pitching in that game, and that was the last time I've been to that stadium, to be honest with you.
And Another fond memory I have of East Carolina and Duke at Jack Coombs was that 2004 team that was so good that won a school record 51 games, and as a result, or not as a result. Sorry, I got a phone call there, but you know, one of those 51 came at Duke, and I remember that night I'd run into some traffic on the way, so I was not there at first pitch, and as I was walking in, Trevor Lawhorn hit a grand slam to left field.
Yeah, that team, Trevor, everyone knows, was a monster at the plate. But yeah, that team with the 51, I thought winning 47 games was a lot, but 51 games is quite a feat. And I wasn't in the area at the time, but I definitely had heard about that team. I wasn't able to see any of their games back then. I didn't have the fortune of having ESPN and being able to rewatch games, etc.
Right. The only thing that was on, if I recall correctly, as far as television, there may have been one or two regular season games, but like you're saying, you didn't have the luxury of ESPN Plus um, to watch each and every game, home or away, with the exception of the ones played at minor league parks, right?
That's right.
but uh, but but yeah, the Super Regional down in Columbia was on ESPN, but otherwise it was radio and live stats.
Yeah, and if I remember, in that Super Regional, did we win one game against South
We
Carolina?
did not. We lost two-run games.
Okay.
I was there. We lost 4-2 and 5-3.
Yeah, and Columbia, that's one ballpark I went to one time during my career early on. I liked the ballpark. That was back when Ray Tanner coached before he became athletic director. But yeah, he had left NC State for South Carolina, and we went down there and played them. Facilities are nice, and it was just a good place to play. We ended up losing that game and coming back home. We didn't come back home. I think we stopped and played Winthrop. But yeah, I couldn't remember watching that regional. Like I said, I think I was out in Washington State at the time for some reason. But that's a great season they had. Unfortunately, it ended down in Columbia.
Yeah, you referenced on Sarge Fry Field, and Sarge Fry, or the Sarge as they called it, was a heck of a atmosphere, very unique setting, and you know what I'm talking about if you've been to that ballpark.
Yep.
Um, and it is, of course, I say it's no more. I'm not sure what's in that spot now. Of course, they play at Founders Park or whatever corporate name the ballpark has now down by the river near downtown. But
Yeah,
the,
when we played back then, I remember one of the things that stood out when batting practice. I don't know if anybody remembers. I'm sure that Pirate fans do. David Daniels, a two-way star out of Greenville,
oh yeah,
but he played. He played with us in the spring at times, and he actually went to that game with us, and he was taking batting practice. And everyone knows how strong that man is, but I've seen him hit some balls out of that park into the other park on the other side of the billboards and everything that may not have landed to this day, but he put on a batting display and batting practice like I've never seen. And that's the one thing I remember. The other part, obviously, is losing the game, but seeing David Daniels hit a monstrous balls out of the park was a majestic thing to watch. I was fortunate enough to see it firsthand. He was a big man and very strong.
and that's another aspect of Sarge Fry. And the old softball field or softball stadium was out beyond left field,
Yeah.
and
He was landing them out there in left field of or shortstop area of that field. It seemed like,
yeah,
yeah, I remember that. It was quite a show, and not a lot of people know this, but Jeff Blake also participated in spring practices, never in games, but uh, David Daniels was part of that Greenville Rose high school team, just up and down the lineup, full of all stars that went to the state championship. So but he was a football player, and he did come out and play in the spring games with us.
I knew Jeff Blake had been a baseball player. It seems like now that you bring that up, that I'd recalled hearing that. So at the
Yeah,
young age of 9 or whatever.
yeah, he took practice, and he's a great baseball player too. Him and Steve Godden in right field, they would put on a display. I tell you what, those two arms, both of them had cannons of arms from right field to home plate, and it was almost like a battle between those two on who had the strongest arm. But that was another incredible show to watch.
I can imagine with Jeff Blake and the way he could throw a football through, arguably the best deep ball, right there. He and David Garrard, the way they
Yeah,
threw it with such a trajectory.
like a
Steve Logan
teardrop.
and Doug Martin would talk about throwing it down a chimney, uh,
Yeah, exactly.
dropping it in a trash can.
Yeah, Jeff's ball especially, it was just like a teardrop, and he even took that to the NFL. Up in Cincinnati, threw some beautiful passes to those wide receivers. It was something to behold. And
Yeah,
fortunately, I was able to go to the Peach Bowl and watch them come back and beat NC State in that game. One of the greatest games I've ever seen.
yep. Carl Pickens and Darnay Scott, and after lighting up the NFL in that season, and I think leading the Bengals to probably 10 or 11 wins. You had Jeff. A lot of people don't realize this. For a short period of time, coming off that season, Jeff Blake, was the highest paid player in the NFL.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, yeah, but coming off a Pro Bowl season, for it wasn't long, but for a short period of time, Jeff Blake was the highest paid player in the National Football League. But kind of taking a look now, at what the Pirates have ahead next weekend, and then we'll give you our American scoreboard at what transpired this week. The Pirates will be headed to Houston to take on the Rice Owls and new head coach David Pierce. The Owls went 1-2 over the weekend. Very competitive though, down at FAU, and the Pirates will definitely have to have their A game as they head out to Houston. I know definitely the farthest road trip of the year, and a young team getting on a plane, taking on a team that hasn't had a lot of success, but has a new head coach. Playing with newfound excitement. Very very intrigued to see how the Pirates handled these 4 road games this week against a very good Duke team and a highly motivated Rice team with new leadership.
Yeah, and what you'll see happen with Rice is they're going to be a lot more competitive towards the end of their season as it goes along. That coach is going to have them playing better, just in different ways. It's hard to explain, but when you get a coach in there that coaches college baseball, understands it a little bit better, he's going to get in there and make sure those guys are putting in work, get them back on track, and not be such a lackadaisical type club. It's young men, can't be treated like professional baseball players. Those guys are professionals for one reason, because they're great at the sport, obviously, but they know how to prepare themselves to be competitive. And that's what he's going to bring to that team. He's going to make sure they're more competitive, so it's not going to be a walkover like it seems to be, had seemed to be happening with Rice earlier in the year. So, yeah, you got to go down there and treat it with a little bit of a understanding that this team will be competitive, and there's there's not going to be any quit in them, and prepare just as normal and go down there and let's bring back the series and hopefully another sweep.
As we take a look here at the standings after week 1 of league play, you have the Pirates on top at 3-0. East Carolina, of course, looking to win a 6th straight regular season title. But as Cliff Godwin mentioned in today's post game, after the sweep of Memphis, the team had a meeting, I guess, going into the weekend, and he said he had to correct a couple of our team leaders because they mistakenly they were talking about what the program had accomplished, but Cliff said he very quickly jumped in and said, "No, no." He said, the majority of you guys, haven't accomplished anything. He said, and that's the way we have to approach it, because if we don't, it won't be good.
Yeah, they may have heard that stat where they won 39 out of 49 series in the in the conference since 2016. But yeah,
Right.
that's in the past, right? Coach is right. Uh, the other guys did that type of stuff. You have to put in work this year.
Yep. Which kind of reminds me of a funny clip that I'll send to you. On the football side of things with the late Mike Leach, and talk that he was having with his Red Raiders team. The season after they had won 11 games, and they were taking some things for granted, and went and got beat at Houston. Also had some close calls that, where they won, but games that they,
Yeah,
should not have been, competitive. At least, Coach Leach's, his mind and perspective, and he was just saying it was hilarious. Um,
yeah.
just the
He's
way Mike Leach is.
he's
He
quite
said
a character, right?
he said that was Michael Crabtree that made one of those plays. He said not you.
Yeah. So Mike Leach had a gifted way of making things funny in a way, but getting his point across as well. But
Right.
yeah, he's quite a character, and rest in peace to Mike. He was always fun. His press conferences are golden. I'll say it that way.
Some of those things were definitely intended to be funny, probably, and probably more often than not, it was just Mike Leach being Mike Leach, and it ended up being funny because of his personality. But running through these league standings, you have East Carolina 3-0, as I mentioned. Florida Atlantic taking 2 out of 3 from Rice. UTSA, after dropping on the Friday night game to Blake Gillespie and the Charlotte 49ers, in which the Roadrunners struck out 13 times. UTSA, um, they responded by winning 10-3, and then they won the rubber match today. Um, you had South Florida. The Bulls, were
They beat
2-1.
Maryland. They beat
Sorry, go
Maryland.
ahead.
Seems like South Florida beat Maryland today. They weren't playing in conference. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I thought they
No, no,
played.
you're good. I was finding those numbers there as far as South Florida. They were playing UAB.
Okay, all right. So I
Yeah,
must.
they lost 3-1 in the series opener, and then bounced back. They're in Birmingham, winning 12-4 and 9-7.
Okay, all right.
And,
Thank.
and then you also had, there in the standings on the screen, it says 1-1, because when that screenshot was taken, the Tulane Wichita State game had not gone final. But Tulane, the Green Wave, they bounced back. After losing the series opener there in New Orleans to the Shockers 10-4, they respond with 8-6 and 11-5 victories. So the Green Wave are also 2-1. So of course, then you have Wichita State 1-2, UAB 1-2, Charlotte 1-2, Rice 1-2, and of course the Memphis Tigers, who got swept by the Pirates, are 0-3. But a very competitive 0-3, and definitely better than some of the Memphis teams we've seen down through the years. We'll see how things go over the long haul. It may not prove to be that way, but
Yeah,
definitely liked what I saw from the Tigers with their pitching staff the first 2 games, and then obviously one thing we haven't even talked about. I can't believe that we did not when we were discussing Friday's game. Their outfield play, be it James Smith, or
Nick's.
the names of the left and right fielders are escaping me at
Oh,
the moment, but all
Trot-
3 made diving catches.
yeah. Well, one of them's Trot Nixon's son, and everybody knows
Yeah,
it's
Chase Nixon.
yeah.
I think he,
Trot.
he was the right fielder.
Yeah, they moved him all around. He played every position, every outfield position this weekend, and
Yeah,
uh,
I guess he played center today with Smith.
yeah, excellent outfield play. Obviously, he comes from a baseball family. His father one of the more famous baseball players in the history of North Carolina. But yeah, they definitely played very well in that game. I was going back to the conference. UTSA, they've held their own. They had a tough run of games. They beat Texas, and then they took 2 out of 3 to Charlotte, and they ran up against Gillespie, and he had a no hitter earlier, as you had mentioned, and he comes back and strikes out 13 on the Friday start. So yeah, Charlotte's number 1 looks to be the real deal.
And I will mention those overall records very quickly. FAU 19-5, and in addition to winning that series against Rice, they dropped a 6-5 midweek game to Miami. And then you have Tulane, as I mentioned, the Green Wave took 2 out of 3 from the Shockers. They had fallen to Lamar 14-4 in the midweek. So after a very rough start of the week, with a pair of fairly lopsided losses, they finish 2-2. Then you have UAB at 15-9, 1-2 in the league. In the midweek, they were blown out 14-2 by a very good Troy team that took 2 out of 3. According to what you said, I knew they had split the first 2, and then Troy won the rubber match today against the Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina. With UTSA in the midweek, you referenced that thriller in extra innings. They had 8-7, 12-inning win at Dish Falk Field in Austin. Actually, after our game, I watched the last inning and a half of that UTSA Texas matchup, and it was kind of funny. Let me see here.
Bubba, you still with us? Sorry, I think we lost you there for a minute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, you're back.
Okay. Sorry, there's a little. I was going to upload a screenshot that I had, and it was funny that the UTSA official baseball account had put on X, when they won on Tuesday night against the Longhorns. They had the horns down, but there's a glitch in the StreamYard system that when you close a tab just for a split second, it makes you lose your audio. So hopefully they'll get that squared away. But taking a look, let's see here. You have Charlotte in the midweek, and they had a 7-6 win over App State, a game in which they had a 6-run lead and then had to hold on for dear life at the end. Wichita State now is 8-15 following the series loss at Tulane, and they did not play in the midweek. And lastly, the Rice Owls, prior to dropping 2 out of 3 down in Boca Raton, they had fallen 4-2 to Incarnate Word at Reckling Park on Tuesday. So there you have a look in and around the American Athletic Conference, following the first weekend of league play. And as you look around the nation, John, there were some very big series this week, and weekend, I should say. What were some of those that stood out to you?
Well, we were talking about Wake Forest and Clemson. I think Wake Forest ended up losing today. They were almost about to take that series, but obviously the big games were down in the SEC region or the SEC conference. You had Georgia putting it on Florida a couple games. Then you had LSU and Texas playing today. I think Texas ended up winning that series by winning today. So LSU was number 2 in the country. Texas is 8. So yeah, there were some good. I saw Chapel Hill, UNC. They took 2 out of 3 in their series. So as far as across the state, I think Wake Forest has been playing a lot better, but Clemson is a tough team for an early in conference scheduling that they have. But I think as far as ACC goes, Virginia is disappointed. Obviously, Duke's semi-disappointed. Wake's picked it up. Clemson's doing what they're supposed to. FSU is at the top 5 in the country, so they might not be as strong in the SE or ACC as they were last year, but they're starting to come together a little bit.
Right. Yeah. I knew. Yeah, like you mentioned, Wake lost a heartbreaker today, losing a late inning lead in Clemson. Eric Bakich, Nick Schnabel, and company, and take the series with a 7-6 victory. And then did NC State end up sweeping Pittsburgh? I knew they had taken the first two.
They lost today. They won 2 out of 3.
Okay, and then I knew North Carolina had ruled BC 10-0 in 7 innings today to win that series.
Yep, and Stanford's kind of slipped off a little bit. They lost again to California today, 10 innings.
Okay, so yeah, they were swept because they had lost the first 2 games 13-3 and 13-4, and just goes to show you. And Virginia swept at home by Duke. Stanford swept at home by Cal. North Carolina, was challenged by BC or lost a game. I think they won the other 2 fairly comfortably, at least today.
To your point, North Carolina has not played as well lately as they did early in the year. That's for sure.
In the SEC, you had South Carolina Gamecocks. After racking up a lot of wins early against a fairly soft schedule, they were swept by Clemson. They were swept this weekend by Arkansas.
Yep, and we know Arkansas is where Zach Root ended up going, and he's been their Friday starter, as you mentioned. ERA up in the 4s. A lot of people out there like him. There's uptick in his fastball, I've heard. So see how he pans out in Arkansas. Definitely a team to watch going to the World Series. They got a heck of a squad. And I love that ballpark as well, one of the better ones out there in the country.
Yeah, I've never. Well, I've take that back. I have technically been to Arkansas, but the only time I've been to the state of Arkansas is when the Pirates played in the Liberty Bowl in 2009 against Arkansas. My family and I drove across the Mississippi just to say that I had been to Arkansas, but would definitely love to get to Fayetteville sometime in Baum Stadium or Baum Walker Stadium, and definitely one of the best atmospheres in all of college baseball. Right up there. You think of Baum Walker, you think of Swayze at Ole Miss, you think of Dudy Noble, you think of Alex Box, you think of Texas A&M, you think of the Jungle in East Carolina, and you think of South Carolina, Clemson. There's about 15 or 20 programs that are definitely above the rest.
Yeah, and there's one that I haven't been to in a long time, but it was something to behold from a fan's perspective back in the day, and that was X Stadium. And I've been there one time as a player, pitched on that field. The first night we played against Wichita State, Johnny Beck was on the mound. You should have seen the crowd out there. That was a whole different atmosphere for Wichita State baseball back in the 80s, obviously, and early 90s. It's changed a little bit now, but Gene Stevenson era, what a place to play, man.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of I know you described it, a bunch of cars parked out in the outfield, and
Yeah.
it sounded kind of similar to Duty Noble from the standpoint of everything that was going out beyond the outfield fence.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of a different a second atmosphere, kind of like East Carolina, where you have the jungle and then you have people that sit inside the park. So you have that second aspect to the fans at that stadium, and it was quite impressive. I have to. We all knew what Wichita State was all about back then, but I had no idea until I got there and was able to see what they could deliver. I came from the jungle, so there's not going to be a lot that impressed me as far as the fans and the craziness and rowdiness, but they kind of had that same thing going on.
And I've had the chance, like I mentioned, to go to several games at South Carolina and experience their atmosphere and postseason play. But some of those, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, LSU, etc., have not had a chance to go. Did have some friends that were able to go when we were the number one seed at LSU back in 1999, coached the players' second season, and they said the old Alex box was definitely, all it was cracked up to be, and that its reputation was definitely well earned.
Yeah, that's one place I was never able to go, but I did follow that series, and we had a team that year, and it would have been nice if we could have taken out LSU and went to the World Series.
Remember Travis Thompson, our ace. He unfortunately, I'm trying to remember. I don't know if it was elbow, bicep, or what, but he had an injury, and so after we had won the first game with LSU and not been able to hold like an 8-1 lead in that second game with the Tigers, you didn't have the best of feelings going into that final game. I guess Game 7 of the regional on Monday.
Kind of reminiscent of when the Longhorns came to Greenville.
Yeah, very similar to that, and also the Texas Tech series where after we didn't win that super regional in Game 2, you didn't have the best of vibes going into Game 3.
Yeah, when we lost the lead in the second game of Texas, you just kind of felt a little bit of a doom feeling, having to play them a third game. And the Texas Tech game is wow. I remember I'm sitting there, I'm like, we need one hit, and then we needed one hit again, and we get this one hit, and we're going to be finally in, where we want to be, Omaha, and it just did not happen. But we got our chances, and we hopefully can continue with the great teams that we've been having. And one of these days, it's just going to come out of the blue. Next thing you know, we're all packing to go to Omaha.
No doubt. Well, John, appreciate your time as always. I know you have to run. I need to as well. And we appreciate everyone tuning in. Again, you're watching This Week in Pirate Baseball as we take a look back each and every week. We try to make it Sunday night. Finally made that happen, but it's either Sunday night or Monday night, depending on our schedules. And the Pirates, of course, a 3-1 week, and now 15-9 overall, 3-0 in conference play. Have 4 road games this week as they travel to Durham on campus at Jack Coombs, 7:00 first pitch against the very talented Duke Blue Devils. And you have former Pirate Eric Tyler, who's the hitting coach for Duke, and then this weekend, East Carolina will play its second league series out at Reckling Park in Houston against the Rice Owls, David Pearson and company. But that will do it for this episode of the show. Be sure to follow us on social media, on X and YouTube at Jungle Tales Pod, and then the same on Instagram. Be sure to like, follow, comment, all those things on any of those platforms. But former East Carolina pitcher John White, that will do it for This Week in Pirate Baseball. We'll talk to you soon, and as always, go Pirates.